Answer the call, Carl's.
60% of public school children in the state of Arizona today are minorities. That complicates racial integration because there aren't enough white kids to go around.
And will controversial comments from a Prescott area lawmaker tarnish all Republicans in his race or give his opponents an opening to talk about race and other issues? We'll hear from one of the candidates taking on David Stringer, and protests after a woman is denied a prescription ordered by her doctor because the pharmacist said it went against his beliefs. Religion and medicine collide at an Arizona pharmacy tonight on Politics Unplugged. And good evening, I am political editor Dennis Welch, and this is Politics Unplugged.
How can they make that choice for me? How is it their right?
And we start tonight with a topic that touches on the soul. An Arizona pharmacist refuses to fill a prescription for a woman facing a heartbreaking health crisis. After a doctor says her baby will not survive, he ordered a drug to help end her pregnancy, but the pharmacist says filling that order violates his conscience. Now that pharmacist was allowed to do so because an Arizona law says you have the right to refuse the law. One of 6 states in the country where that is allowed. And joining us now is State Representative Athena Salman to talk a little bit about this. And I want you to kind of give us a little bit of a background about this law. Why did the Arizona legislature pass this in the first place?
Yes, and thank you for having me on the show today. So one of the things that we've seen is what used to be considered extreme right wing is now mainstream conservatism. And so every single one of my conservative colleagues have voted for and will continue to vote for policies like this that takes us backwards and infringes on an individual's right to control their own body.
All right. And we've often heard that conservatives say that health care decisions should be strictly between you and your doctor. How do you think we can how do you think they can justify letting someone else's religious beliefs get in the way of that?
That's a great question, and I want to take us a little bit back because what Walgreens did to Miss Ortega is common practice in the United States today. And for my entire life, for my mother's entire life, even my grandmother's entire life, we have lived in a country where women are routinely shamed and judged for exercising their constitutional right to reproductive health care. And we've seen that over the past 3 decades manifest into laws that try to interfere with women's constitutional right by putting the governor, the government, the pharmacist, anyone but the doctor between her and that decision.
So tell us about a little bit of what happened. This happened at a Walgreens pharmacy. Tell us a little bit about Walgreens policy and what you saw happen and go down here.
Yeah, absolutely. So Walgreens decided that it's okay for a pharmacist to turn away a woman and her prescription if they cite a religious belief compelling them to do so. But the reality of the situation is this isn't about religious beliefs, this is about control. And in this circumstance, it's disturbing that we live in a society that when a woman makes a very personal decision about what she should do with her body, literally anyone else can trump that over her. That is fundamentally wrong. You know, when men go into a pharmacy, their health always comes first. We should have the same expectation for women, and the fact that that didn't happen in this situation, there's a name for that. It's called discrimination, and it's wrong.
Okay, now isn't there a way, if you spoke with people from Walgreens in the pharmacy and whatnot, isn't there a way that maybe another pharmacist could have filled that prescription?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You know, the law requires that pharmacists put into writing objections to medication. But I think the bigger point is that even if the law wasn't there, no one should have the right to stop women from exercising their constitutionally protected right to reproductive health care. And that goes from whether she's seeking an abortion to whether she's seeking birth control. And given the current environment, that's what women find themselves in today, where they don't know where they're going to be denied.
Okay, now one of your fellow lawmakers, Senator John Kavanagh, we'd invited him to participate on this show today, but he couldn't make it. Now, he doesn't have much of a problem with what happened. Now, he actually said, I don't see why she doesn't respect the pharmacist's right not to do this. Now, he's talking about you.
Well, so I know that the very same people who ushered in this legislation are trying to cast this as a one-off, trying to diminish the severity of the situation. But the reality is that lawmakers like John Kavanagh have put all women, whether they're miscarrying, seeking to end a pregnancy, or even just trying to get birth control, in a position where they can be routinely denied access to constitutionally protected health care. And that is discrimination. What he's describing is discrimination, and I'm here to say that that is fundamentally wrong.
Is there any way, any hope, any chance that you see from your perspective that this law could be overturned, given the makeup of the legislature right now? Given
the makeup. So that, I think that brings us to a couple points that I want to make. So for anyone out there who believes in the constitutional right for every individual's right to control their own body and our constitutional right to self-determination, then we need dramatic change in this upcoming November election, up and down the ballot. And furthermore, it's just a coincidence, but I think it's fitting on the times that Justice Kennedy, the swing vote on Roe v. Wade, announced his retirement from the Supreme Court. And while the vast majority of Americans support access to safe and legal abortion, and 1 in 4 women have had an abortion in their lifetime, if we don't see dramatic change in this election cycle, what happened to Ms. Ortega will pale in comparison to what's down the pipeline.
Do you see a remedy for this, for your perspective, maybe even going through the courts if you can't go through the legislature?
I think the remedy is, I mean, that brings back to what's happening with the Supreme Court. Everyone should be calling their U.S. Senator right now and demanding that any nominee by a president who's currently under investigation for violating our U.S. Constitution, any nominee should be blocked. Because no matter what happens in the court, if we lose that swing vote on the Supreme Court, we're going to be feeling these consequences. Women's rights are going to be under attack for decades to come.
Okay, and I think this is going to be a final question here. Now, as we said earlier, there was some protests that came about because of what happened here. Were you encouraged by what you saw, what you heard?
I was very encouraged. You know, not only did we have the physical protests, but I'm one of the members very active on social media, and I've received responses from the public about people who've been going to Walgreens for years and pulling their prescriptions and boycotting Walgreens, because the fact of the matter is, regardless of whether or not we have a law that allows discrimination against women, Walgreens' policy fell short where it shouldn't have had to fall short. They should have had another pharmacist on staff who could fill that woman's prescription and meet her needs, and they failed to do that. So I'm very encouraged, and I do believe that we're going to see an increase in voter turnout, and I think we're going to see some changes this upcoming November.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for stopping by, and we'll be sure to catch up later down the road. So that is, but we do have more on Politics Unplugged. Just ahead, the First Lady visits Arizona, and a Supreme Court justice calls it quits. We'll check in with our panel about that. But first, one state lawmaker caught up in a controversy about comments he made regarding immigrants. Tonight, one of his opponents says there are other issues we need to focus on. Republican Jodi Rooney tells us what those are just ahead on Politics Unplugged.
Monsoon storms strike. Stay safe with Arizona's family. On air, on social, on your phone with the Arizona's Family News app. Real-time interactive radar, weather alerts, an exclusive network of weather cameras. Backed by the power of the state's largest team of meteorologists, working 24/7 to track storms headed your way. You're prepared because we're prepared. Monsoon 2018 from Arizona's Family on 3TV and CBS 5.
Car wreck? Check. Motorcycle wreck? Check. Truck wreck? Check. Bicycle wreck? Check. UFO wreck? What? In a wreck, you need a check. Call Lerner Road now for a free consultation.
Call 977-1900. People say that I'm a rock star. They think I stay up all night. All night, all night. Well, I look good.
The Hyundai Epic Summer Sales Event with select SUVs starting around $20K. This summer is going to be epic. Make this 4th of July an epic one in a Santa Fe Sport, now for just $219 a month. Only at your Valley Hyundai dealers.
Next up, Another shopper who didn't overpay for designer glasses, and all because she went to America's Best. Right now, they're featuring celebrity designer frames for women from Jenny McCarthy and Shaquille O'Neal designer frames for men. Mix and match from over a dozen choices and pick up 2 pairs and a free eye exam for just $99.95. Work it, girl. Okay, work it a little less, maybe. The celebrity sales event, it's not just a better deal, it's America's Best. Hurry, sale ends Saturday. I like this beat.
Yeah, we can get that submitted by Monday.
At U-Haul, look, we know every family moves at their own pace.
Come on, guys.
That's why we have U-Box.
Is that heavy?
Where you can pack in a day.
Hi, Mom.
In a week.
It's starting to snow.
In a month. We can store it or ship it.
I think that's the kitchen.
How?
You guys excited about the new house?
And when you want it.
Thanks, you've been lifesavers.
Don't want to lift a finger? We got you covered there too. U-Box by U-Haul. Move at your pace. Reserve today at uhaul.com.
We start out with the latest on breaking news coming out of Sky Harbor Airport.
And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. We are on the campaign trail where State Representative David Stringer recently made some controversial comments that could give his opponents a new opening. And joining us today is Jodi Rooney. She's running as a Republican in Legislative District 1. The 2 other candidates in that race are David Stringer and Noel Campbell. Thank you very much for joining us here. Now, obviously, we saw earlier on the show with some comments that Mr. Stringer had made regarding immigrants, for saying there was not enough white kids to go around. I want to get your take personally about those comments. What do you think of them?
Those are comments that are undignified of a representative. And it's unfortunate sometimes that we have people in our nation that think in this manner, but I don't believe that that's truly representative of the good people up in Legislative District 1, nor Arizona, nor our nation.
Do you think it disqualifies him as a candidate? We've seen the governor of Arizona say that he should step down. We've seen the head of the Republican Party really go after him as well.
I think there's a lot of pressure on him to step down right now, and certainly they have called for that. What the bigger issue is, though, is it representative of the people? And I think that's what this is really about.
And what do you think?
I think it's not representative of the people.
So, okay. So, again, do you think it's a disqualification for saying stuff like this? Do you agree with any of Mr. Stringer's comments?
No, I disavow those comments and have gone on record as so. Okay. So certainly, you know, those that have called for his resignation, I believe that was correct. It was swift, and I believe that's not what the Republican Party is about. So I think that we need to have a change.
Okay, and what did you think about his his attempt at an apology? It was billed as it was an apology. He held it at a soul food restaurant in Phoenix, outside of his district, in which he really didn't apologize at all. At first, he didn't. He said he was sorry for making comments that could be taken out of context and then used by Democrats as a hit piece. And then he gave the, well, I'm sorry if anybody was offended.
Well, Lolo's is a wonderful place to have a meal, that's for sure. However, I'm not so sure that that was the correct place. When we saw that coming through, we thought it was a joke. When it actually came through and they were asking him the questions and he struggled with answering them, it just made me question the integrity of where he was really wanting to go with that. Not being able to own the comments, and told me that there's not accountability there in this particular case.
Okay, and let's move on to immigration. He was speaking about immigration on that. What are your thoughts on this? You're running for the state legislature. What would you like to do if you get there?
Well, I definitely think we need to have a secure border because that's important to be able to have free trade going back and forth. It's important for our economy. But to be able to have that, we need to have immigration reform. And so I think that's something that's going to be important moving forward because we need to be able to have legal travel back and forth for our labor force coming in to be able to work in agriculture and also the trades. And we do have a labor shortage, but I do appreciate and I support the work of Governor Brewer, Governor Ducey, and the president to secure the border.
So you support the president? Do you support his policy that in which kids are being separated from their parents when they come and present themselves at the border?
I believe that they've changed that at this point, that they're moving backwards, and I think that was a good idea. I don't think separation of families is the right way to go. I think that we can handle it in a better way.
Okay. And again, by what definition would you think that the border is secure? Because I've heard that mantra now for many years down at the state capitol, and it's always when more security, more security. What level of security do you need to see before you're satisfied?
Sure, and I think that it is a question we grapple with. It's complex. Certainly, it is a national issue, but it impacts us here in Arizona. And so, at our very base, we have to be able to have a voice at the table and be willing to roll up our sleeves. I'm willing to work on that as well. So, what that means for me is I look at having a plan. Let's put together a proper plan. Reforming what's going in there, because what's working now is not working.
Okay, and what about the DACA, the Deferred Action Childhood Arrival recipients, the dreamers that are here? Do you see a pathway for citizenship? Would you want to see a pathway for citizenship for these kids brought here as young kids, no fault of their own?
I think for anyone that's coming to the country that there should be some legal way for them if that's, we're moving forward in that way. But I think that it's going to be important to have a legal way to do that. And so, unfortunately, a lot of people have worked around that. Again, it's a federal issue, but it still affects us here. Like even in the Maricopa County college system, it affects us there, because we do have students that are trying to get their education. Okay, I do see both sides on that.
Okay, and I do want to move on to another topic. You just saw in our first segment we were talking about a right to refuse law. Now this was involving that case in Walgreens where a woman was denied a prescription to end her pregnancy. It was ordered by her doctor. What do you think about this law? Do you think this is good law for Arizona?
I do see a concern here. Anytime that a prescription is written by a doctor for a person, whether it's a woman or a man, and there's a refusal there, I think we need to question that. Certainly every case is different, but I did have concern when I heard about that story.
And do you think this is a law that needs to be repealed?
To be honest, I would need more information on it, because I didn't come prepared to talk about that particular one. However, I do care about that.
No, I understand you didn't come here to talk about that, but these are some of the decisions you're going to have to be grappling with if you go to the Statehouse.
Sure.
So obviously, you oppose abortion, but again, would you be willing to consider repealing this law?
If I would have to have more information on what the law states. I do oppose abortion in the case of rape or incest or the detriment of the mother. And that's just where I stand.
Okay, and if you do get elected, if you do make it all the way, what are some of your top priorities when you get into the Statehouse?
Well, definitely water is a big one here in Arizona, especially right now. We do need a drought conservation plan. In our district particularly, we have an issue where it's hard to hold on to teachers because we don't have enough housing that they could afford. And as that goes, it's also our firemen, our police. So I think our price points, that's something to look at as well. Healthcare is another one. When I'm out at meetings, I hear people talk about access to health care. There's a lot of people that are moving up into northern Arizona, and therefore we're having trouble in the rural areas of having enough health care. So that's another one too. But what I do love is free choice for schools, and we have a lot of that, and I think that's the right way to go.
Okay, and education obviously was always a big issue. It's like over 40% of the general fund revenue, so always a big topic every year down at the legislature. What did you think of the Red for Ed movement?
Oh, it was historic. You know, I was in Flynn Brown at the time while this was going on, and that's a nonpartisan group. There were around 35 fellows. So the robust conversation that was going on, it was amazing. What we saw, all that swell of red coming down the Capitol, they clearly spoke. They voted with their feet.
And real quick, do you support extending the voucher program?
I believe
to send kids to private parochial school with taxpayer money.
I think we need to balance that out. I think just cap it where it's at.
All right, well, thanks a lot. That's all the time we have for this segment. But we do have more on Politics Unplugged just ahead. Our panel weighs in on a Supreme Court vacancy and more just ahead here on Politics Unplugged.
Call Express Flooring today and declare your independence.
Independence from anxiety.
That's right. Express will bring flooring samples to your home on your schedule for free in-home shopping.
Independence from high prices.
Call before July 4th for explosive 4th of July savings up to 63% off. Plus, buy now with no interest until 2020.
Gain your independence from your tired, worn-out old flooring with sparkling new flooring from Express.
Express Flooring is the best. Call 800-EXPRESS.
Elements Massage is spreading kindness this month, and you can do the same. Head to Elements, purchase and enjoy any massage, and get a free 30-minute massage to pay forward. Just mention the word kindness. Pass it along to someone who can benefit from therapy and relaxation. Take care of yourself and spread kindness this month with Elements.
I would never suggest going through the insurance company because they never have your best interests at heart. One call, that's all, and that's all it took. I would definitely refer somebody to Learn and Enroll.
Call 977-1900.
When you're America's best value, you don't need a whole lot of hoopla. What you need is a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty and an IIHS Top Safety Pick Award.
And you're gonna need one of these because these cars are out of this world.
Smooth. Real smooth.
During Kia's America's Best Value 4th of July event, get 0% APR for 66 months plus $1,500 summer bonus cash on select models.
Election day fiascos, screw-ups, called incompetent by Arizona's Republican Attorney General. Michelle Reagan has failed Arizona for long enough. Meet conservative Republican Steve Gaynor, businessman, outsider, pro-Trump Republican. Steve Gaynor is a lifetime NRA member who spent his career building companies from the ground up. Now he's running for Secretary of State to run the office like a business, protect our elections, and crack down on illegal voting. Steve Gaynor for Secretary of State.
We're a nation of fixers. Everything from little fixes to big ones. So when the mattress industry was broken, we didn't rest until we fixed that too. We're Tuft and Needle. Learn more at tn.com.
No matter where you read it, hear it, or who quotes it, Spencer's will always beat it. Spencer's TV and Appliance. It's like having a friend in the business.
And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. It's time to talk it out with our partners from First Strategic. Kurt Davis, Barry Dill are with us here today. And I want to start with David Stringer. You know, a few weeks ago, there was that video that surfaced of him saying that there was not enough white kids to go around. Well, this last week, he held a press conference again in a soul food restaurant in South Phoenix to talk about this. Now, Barry, it was ostensibly to issue an apology, but there was no apology. And I want to start with you because you were there. First question, I just have to just clear the decks on this, that you don't have a candidate. You guys aren't representing anybody in this race.
No, Dennis. This had all of the makings of such a historic mess that just as an observer of politics, I had to be there to watch it because it was set up to be a disaster, and it only got worse from there.
And did you see any of this, Kurt?
Yes.
And what did you think about this?
Honestly, it'll go down in the annals. You'll see it used in PR classes on what not to do. That's probably where it'll end up in the long haul. I'm actually surprised it hasn't shown up yet on any of the late night shows.
Yeah, and well, let's take a clip from that right now, and show you a little bit of a soundbite of what David Stringer had to say about this, and we'll talk about it afterward.
So if there are people in this room who were offended, I am going to apologize for making statements that allowed someone else to excerpt them, misrepresent them to the community.
What did you think? Because that is not an apology. No, this was billed as an apology. It was strange because we got the press release in the morning and it said he's expected to issue an apology, and then we get there for his comments, and then we get there and he says, well, I'm here to talk about criminal justice reform, and then he says that.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's a non-apology apology. But why would you construct a press conference without any preparation beforehand and not expect to have questions about his statements from before? I mean, that was mistake number one. Number two was trusting Jared Maupin, who is a con man, who kind of set this whole thing up, sent the press release out, and who ended up just bailing all over Representative Stringer before it was all over about his comments, even though they were supposed to be there talking about criminal justice reform. It was just, I mean, it was just a huge mistake.
I don't know. And I mean, this press conference got so far out of whack. I mean, David Stringer was asked if he was a white nationalist, and instead of just saying no, he said, well, there are many different contexts and connotations of being a white nationalist. And then he said he wasn't. What does this do for the Republican Party? I mean,
well, I think that's why you've seen the chairman of the party, you've seen the governor, you've seen the head of the Chamber of Commerce, you've seen lots of other people ask Representative Stringer to step down out of the race. Once you get on this track, you can't go down the path he's gone down, and it was a PR disaster, plain and simple.
It took him 3 minutes to explain why he's not not a white nationalist.
Yeah,
and still didn't deny it.
And this is going to hurt Republicans. I mean, because people when they see this kind of stuff, Democrats could try to paint this as the face of the Republican Party.
Well, of course, but that goes on every cycle, and it doesn't matter whether Mr. Stringer is there or not. That kind of tactic will be and always has been attempted to be used. Voters vote for candidates specifically for the office they run for, and we're going to see what happens in LD1 with this in this primary.
And last question, Barry, does this open up that race, Stringer's race, Legislative District 1?
I do think it does, and we talked about this the other day, and it's because the electorate in Prescott has really changed. There's a lot of Californians, a lot of Nevadans, others have moved into the Prescott area that don't adhere to the real hardcore right philosophy of some in the Republican Party, and so I think it's wide open.
And that philosophy is not hardcore right either. That's a philosophy that's outside of either party.
Okay, and I want to move on now to the big national news of the week. It was the retirement of Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy. Announced he's going to be ending his term here at in July. A lot of people are reading this as this is going to reverse Roe versus Wade. This is going to be a hit for workers' rights, gay rights. Barry, how do you see this as a Democrat? How do you see this playing out?
Well, it certainly has that potential. But we'll just have to see who the nominee is, go through the hearing process, and see what happens.
Yeah, and this is it really could be a big win for conservatives out there, because it looks like Trump is going to be packing this court with much younger justices who are going to be there for decades, and could use this as a backstop for a lot of different things in the future.
Well, you remember in the presidential campaign, it was a key issue of why it was important for both sides, a key issue to motivate the base. And it's proven to be true. Now, let's also understand all this rhetoric that will be going on. A lot of people make money off of this. Supreme Court justice appointments create a whole series of grassroots organizations that get paid to make noise, and we're going to hear a lot of noise.
Okay, now let's turn our attention now. We had a big visitor in the Valley last week. Melania Trump, First Lady, comes here to visit. Makes a couple of stops in Tucson, one in here. In the Valley, she visited one of those facilities where they house young migrants who are brought here unaccompanied. What do you think about the message that sent?
Well, I just hope it's just not a publicity stunt or a PR move, and I hope when she returns back to Washington that her husband will listen to her and her cares and repeat some of what she saw of how deplorable the conditions are.
And real quick, does this make up for the PR disaster from the week before when she went to Texas and wore that jacket that said, "I don't really care to you"?
You mean the one that she was showing the media?
Yeah.
Look, this issue, we're talking about immigration, and immigration is a good issue for the president to be talking about.
All right, well, thanks a lot. That is all the time we have here tonight, but be sure to join us next week for more Politics Unplugged. Good night.